Okay, let's take a look at that bouncing ball. I'm gonna drop on a terrain. So let me import a grass.
I also could not figure out how to um, get any like grass or any sort of texture onto the train. Like I couldn't
Okay,
input
this will help show
the.
that then. Now do a game object, 3D object, and I'll drop on a terrain. Now once this drops on here, I want to change the position of it. So negative 20, I think is what I've been using, and negative 20 for the Z. Now to drop on the grass. Over here, I have to have terrain selected in the hierarchy. Over here, I click the paintbrush, the paint terrain. Then there's an edit terrain layers. So I click the edit terrain, and I choose create layer. When that comes up, I should see my imported image there. So I can double click that, and that'll put grass on her. Okay. So now I want to drop on a UV sphere or UV sphere, and I guess it's fine where it is because I'm gonna move it here shortly. Now I'm gonna go to the animation window here. If you don't have the animation window, then if you don't see it appearing down here from last time, if you do window and you choose animation, and you choose animation, it'll pop up with this somewhere on your screen. You can click this tab here and then move it next to these other tabs and put the animation there. We're probably going to do so much with animation the rest of the semester that's probably worthwhile having that as a separate tab. Now, if I have the sphere selected, it'll even say to begin animating the sphere. If I have terrain, you can animate terrain. Huh. But whatever I have selected is what it's going to refer to in the animation. Okay, so if I have the sphere selected and I click create, I can give it some kind of name. And let me check my camera. That's maybe not too bad. We'll see. Okay, go back to my sphere. And you see there's an add property here. This is where we can control what we want to modify. So if I click add property, it'll pop up with this menu. And if I expand transform, then I'm going to be affecting the position, how far up it goes. So I click that. It will automatically create a beginning and ending here that are the same. So if I ran this at this point, you'd see nothing happens because it isn't moving. Now you can type in the frame you're working with here. If I type in 0, you can expand this and you can see what your original values are. Well, maybe I don't want my y to be at 0. I want it to be up in the sky. So I change that maybe to 8. So let me go to my camera. And go out a little bit. Okay, that's about right, it looks like. Okay. Can't see it here, but that's okay. If I scroll out or use my mouse wheel to zoom out, I can see it. Now that's our starting place. And of course, it takes your starting and your ending, and it fills in what it thinks is a natural progression in between. Okay, so I'm going to have it maybe drop at right here. So if I click there, and I'll go to my, you see the 60 here. To the right of it is a button. I don't know what it looks like, a triangle maybe, or not a triangle. Too small for me. But anyway, if you put the mouse over it, it's add keyframe. And that'll add a keyframe to, let me click view on that. Just get that for later. That'll add some entries I can work with. So, back here at 0, y was 8. So right here, I want y to be maybe not 0, 1. No, maybe 0. Can't tell. I hope that's in the 0.45. I'm going to change that later anyway. Now, really this distance here that you see and related to time, I want it to be the same as the distance up here, which is again time. So if that's 15, I want this to be back up to where it was at 30. So I can grab this and I can move this over to 30. 30 would be about right there, based upon looking at this number here. Oops. Move that back there. Well, that's my starting place. Never mind. I need to have it go back up. So what I have is 8. So for this position here, once I get it over there, I'm going to change that to 8. So now if I believe they call that scrubbing, where you can click in this light blue area and see it go back and forth like that. Game view might be a little bit easier to see it. And then if I do a preview, click that, you see it go like that. Now, I have those pretty close together. That's why it's going so fast. I can move these out. Here, and use my mouse wheel to get a little bit better effect. Oops. So let me start off by moving this to right here. That's 50. This other one will be at 100. But let's just see what that, just from the animation. That's not necessarily what it'll look like game-wise, but okay. That's not bad, speed-wise. But I want this to be over here at 100. Or wait a minute. What's that? That's 50. There's 100. Okay, that looks like it's right on there. Okay, so then if I play that, there's it bouncing. Well, the idea then is that when it hits the ground, it should squash the ball some. Now, what he recommends is at the point where it hits the ground, And in my case, I have it hitting the ground technically right there, but I could probably get by with doing one here. But I'll choose this place. If I click Add Property, choose Transform, and choose Scale. Now this is recording off my my beginning scale. Maybe at this point I want it to start squashing. And I have to play with this some. But I'll come here to the side. I'll record another keyframe. And here I'm going to change the scale again. The Y maybe up to 0.5. Well, I need to do some modification on this. I meant that right there. Oh, I didn't do a keyframe. Yeah, let me do a keyframe here. Oh, shoot. Now I didn't do a keyframe. I had to have scale selected for do a keyframe. I could have probably done it right there. Okay. Move that on there. This keyframe, have it as my original Y. So then it comes down, hits, and then starts changing. But I have an additional one in there I didn't want. Okay. This is one I'm just trying to change, but I guess I better select it before I change it. There we go. Okay, that looks like what I want. So I'm going to move this. Or at least move my scale, I should say. That right there. Let me see where I'll move these two. Okay, so come down. That's where it's hitting, and I want my scale to change.
For some reason, mine keeps changing at 20, and I can't figure out how to switch it back.
You have to have it selected, which I keep forgetting to do. See, at this point here, see if I have this selected for the Y. I don't want it up that high. Maybe 0.5. This is 0.5. And I swore I had this selected. Oh, I did change it. Okay, let me get rid of that. Okay, so that is right in terms of that. But I have it going up too fast. See, now it does say 1.281 here, doesn't it? Oh, that's based upon the timeline. This is what I need to change. 0.5 there. And maybe right here. Do another keyframe. Delete that. Choose my scale. Do another keyframe. And the Y here, I want it to be back to 1. Okay, so right here is normal. Starts getting smaller. And by that point, it should be back up to where it was. Then at that point, you'd want to play with the heights of each to get it to what it should be. Like right here, where it first hits, your height of your Y should be 0, and it should be full. At this point, where it's squashed some, should it be up off the ground?
No, not much.
No, not much, if any. So again, I choose that, and maybe I change that to 0.3. So he comes here, hits, squashes the ball, and then I have to think at that point, as it's see, I have it bad there, don't I? See right here, it's still squashed, but then I have it start increasing the scale, but it's not left the ground. If it's squashed down at the point where it leaves the ground is where I think it should assume its original shape. So doesn't look like I have a position there. So let me choose the Y position and choose a new keyframe. And so at the point where squashed, maybe right here, I can move that. So then it's leaving the ground and assuming its original shape. I don't know. That's probably as good as I'm going to get. I don't got that artistic eye. I know in a sense what it should do from a physics standpoint. Now, in terms of the curves, then was that the main problem you were having on those? And don't forget to unmute yourself if you're talking. Well, the other thing is under the curves here, whatever you have selected is what you can change. Now with the Y, at its lowest point, like this right here, they were doing some recommendations of changing this around it so had more of a pronounced effect. And I had a really hard time getting that change much. It's because I think the difference in the values gets changed. Probably if I had the ball way up high, I could play with this more. This actually has more of a curve than the one I created the previous 2 times. I created one during lunch and during the other class. But if I if I change that slightly, and that's what they're talking about is moving that and then applying the what do they say? No memory. I can't remember what options they said to use. Linear type of deal to get more of a pronounced effect right here. So I think I just screwed it up. Don't really worry about that part. But do go through and set the other settings that they indicate. And not too bad bouncing wise. But they indicated on this to, I think, to right click on one of them, and then you choose both tangents and free or linear or constant or whatever they said to change those. And here's the flat that they referred to in the video. So. Key part is that you have to click whatever you're trying to alter. And you see how this is almost, they're so close together you can't see it. Well, he said in the video that as you're changing these, the product of these should be 1. So 1 times 1 times 1 gives us 1. And our other keyframe over here, where I changed that to 0.5. I don't know if I still have my math there, or even if I use 0.5. But if you know a little bit of algebra, you can do it mathematically. X times y times z is equal to 1. And if we change y to equal 0.5 and assumed that the x and the z were going to be the same value, then I could replace the z here with x. X times x is x squared, and I got 0.5. Divide both sides by 0.5. 0.5 is 1/2. You take a fraction, flip it, and multiply it times the top, and you get 2. And then if you take square root of 2, I brought my calculator, but I think it was x equals 1.4. Let's see if that was true. Memory serves me right. Square root of 2. Stupid stupid smart calculator. I think it was 1.4. Which means if all of my products, if this has to equal 1, the product at any keyframe, then if this is 0.5, I would change these to 1.4. Now I'm getting ready to change that again, and I don't have these selected, or I mean the timeline is what it's based upon. Never mind. So 1.4, 1.4. And then over here at this point, it's back to 111, so that's good. I swear sometimes the bouncing looks different to me. Sometimes it looks like it squashes more, and sometimes it doesn't look like it squashes as much. It's probably just my that I haven't done all these settings over here that he says do in that video. But anyway, that's the video part. Is there any questions on that?
I think I just finally figured it out.
Okay. Well, you can animate anything. So let me do some deleting here. And I got my camera here. I'm going to animate my camera. Of course, I need to have it based upon something. So I'm going to drop on a cube, I guess. So game object, 3D object, cube. And I'll move it up a little bit, if that matters. Let me right click and choose import new asset and go to my pictures. Where's my sand? My cube there. I'll drop my sand over here. And this is my game view. So my camera's over here. And I'm going to animate my camera this time. I'm going to have it go back and forth. I did a circle in the other class where it circled around, and it needed a little bit of tweaking, but just to do something different. I guess I could go up and over it, like a half circle, and appear on the other side. Let's try that. That'd be different. Okay, so here's my animation option down here. And again, it's based upon whatever you have selected. So if I want to animate the camera, I choose the camera. Okay, so I'll click create. And I call it camera animation. You can call this whatever you want. And click save. Now I need to record off its, I'm going to change both the position and the rotation, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to click the add property here and transform, record off the position. I'll click add property, do the transform and rotation. And that's all good to begin with. And I find the scene view a little bit easier to wrap my mind around. The blue and the red and the green is the positive values. So over here with your default view of this. This is my positive Z, that's my negative Z. And you can see with the camera, it currently is at -10. Now, since I'm going to move it up and over the cube, I want it up here. At that point, clear up here, the Z is going to be 0. Wait a minute. Yeah, Z will be 0, Y will be whatever. Maybe 5. So I'm going to come over here to, let's say, 30. And I'll, let me think what has changed. Both of those has changed. So actually, if I have them both, if I have everything selected, holding down my shift key and select everything, it'll should create a keyframe for everything. Or you can do them piece at a time, like this position here. If I do a keyframe, it'll based upon just on what I got selected there. Now my position. Let me think about this. I said X doesn't change. No, X doesn't change. Y be 5, let's say. And Z will be 0, because it should be right over the cube. Now my rotation. If I have my rotation and I choose the add keyframe, it drops in my rotation keyframes. And I have to think about this. It was pointing this way. I moved it up and over. I need to rotate it about the Z-axis, I think. Yeah, I believe. So Z.
Try Y.
You think Y? -90.
I think it's X. Never mind.
That's the neat part about Unity is you can just try it and see. You're right. It's X. Okay, so it should be up over there, and I can even see the little lines coming down here. Okay, if you have the camera selected. So then on as it continues its progression, it should get over here, and so maybe that'll be at 60. I'd actually take it back down. You can see it takes a little bit of playing. Like that isn't quite the effect I'd want. I don't think it'd look any better in the game mode. Speed-wise is something else. Okay, let's try to change that out.
What if my camera starts tilting before it gets to the point that it needs to be? Should I just change the rotation?
Well, then the curve is not correct on it. And see, that's part that take me forever to get even halfway decent. I'll show that here in just a second. So this is about 100 and what is that? 103. So I want this at 206. Ah. Hmm. That's probably close enough. Because like you say, it starts tilting the camera, and I don't see the cube anymore. Different ways you could handle that. This is about 106 or 103, so I go about the 50 mark. And maybe I'm happy with the position. I don't want to mess with it. So I just want to mess with the rotation. Maybe specifically I want to mess with the X rotation. So here I can add a keyframe. And you notice it just adds the X I'm working with. And instead of 40, because maybe it was turning too fast, too slow. What was it doing? Probably too fast. Then maybe I could change this to 20. And you see in mine, now I see everything there. So by putting the intermediate step here in the middle, then you can control how fast it changes. No matter what, this right here starts at 0 in terms of my rotation. And this right here gets to 90. But at the halfway mark, I said, okay, I just wanted it at 20. Does that make sense on how you can control that movement?
Yeah, I just reset it to 0 after I added a key point about halfway, and it starts turning at that key point halfway instead.
Right. So yeah, if you were to see everything in between here, which is what you'd see in the curves. Though I'm having a real hard time with the curves right now. So if you find it, then let me know. But this zooming, just I hate it in here. I can't get it to affect what I want. But here's my beginning value. And you see, going up to this 20 mark that I created, it doesn't change the rotation of the camera very much. The real increase is right here. So if I grab this right here and if I change these, I can affect that change somewhat. But even more than that, if I change this value here, this is how you can not play with numbers. You can play with the graph, and you just move this up or down or to the side like that. I don't think I'm going to be able to eyeball it and get it decent. But if you're got a good artistic eye, you can grab this and you can watch this camera preview. And as you change this, you can achieve that effect without playing a bunch of numbers. Though I think the numbers are easier. But anyway, the curves give you a lot of power that way. And you can even right-click on this and say Add Key and give you another number to work with, such that I can move this, like this. I didn't mean to play the game. Now I've really butchered it. But this changes, quite rapidly within this little bit of time frame right here. And again, if you zoom in, zoom out, you have more to play with. In terms of where these values are going to go. I almost had it perfect before, but I've really messed it up trying to use the curves to do this. Okay, there's back to, okay, see the cube, see the cube, see the cube. Okay, so I see the cube everywhere with what changes I made there. So if you're good with trig and you're used to angles and so forth, you probably prefer to put numbers in there. If you've never taken trig in your life and you don't want to know what a degree is, then probably the curves is your best friend. Is there any questions on animating whatever? Now I did the camera. Over here, you'll see the camera has its own animator. So they all have their own animator. And you see I got my camera animation here, and then I also got this animator controller that goes along with it. If you can control the speed of your animation by moving these further apart and so forth. That's kind of tedious if you got really lengthy, if you've done a lot of work here, to sit there and move those and try to space them apart. They also provide the capability that when you double click this, you can grab this animation up here and you control the general speed of it here of the entire animation. So instead of you having to redo all that, you can come up here and put in a value. You don't see it when you do your animation, we found out earlier, but you see it in the game. Because that's what the controller is how it's controlled in the game. So there's 0.5. And I see that actually my Y is probably a little bit too close. I put it as 5, but maybe 7 would be more appropriate. And if you haven't created too many keyframes, your goal on the animations is not to create too many. You create too many, and it's a nightmare. You're sitting there, if you have to make any kind of change, you're doing it forever. You see from my Y position, I got my starting one here, I got one here, and I got one here. So I got 3 total. Since I have so few, if I come here to my Y and I change this in 8, maybe, then it will affect everything in between here and here, and I don't have to change a dozen different Y values. Now, by doing this, though, it's probably going to screw up my rotation. Yeah, see, I'd have to play with the rotations more on that. Because as it's going up, it's pointing the camera over that way. Well, let's take a look at bringing in a Blender animation now and seeing how to work with that. So I'm gonna delete a lot of stuff. Sand I don't need. Main camera animation, and delete my cube here. Okay, so I'll bring up Blender. There's some animations that I was playing this morning and at lunchtime. There's some animations I can create here that don't come straight over to Unity, and I'm still investigating how to bring those in. Just to follow up on what we started yesterday, the shape keys is if I go to my three little or my triangle here, and this is where my vertex groups, my shape keys are, and so forth. I'm in object mode. I click the shape key one time. Remember, that's your basis. You click it one more time, and that's going to be your modified shape. If I go into edit, so I do a tab to go into edit, I right click on the first vertex, and I hold down my shift key and right click on the second one, and I move those up. Then I've just modified this particular shape key here. If I go back to object mode, hadn't changed anything. To create an animation on this, you see down here right below the shape keys is your value. And if I right click down here, I can say insert keyframe. So I choose insert keyframe, and that's like my starting place for my basis. Now if I come over here to 80 in terms of my timeline, and I move this value, I click down here and I move it clear over, or didn't have to clear over, but move it over to wherever, and then you do an I while your mouse is over on this bar right here. There. You see the yellow there. Now if I do an E to end that, now if I do an Alt A, that's how you animate a shape key. Brought that into Unity, and the default Unity doesn't support that. So I need to do some playing to see if there's some settings that allow us to bring that in. But if you're wondering how do you take a shape key and animate it, that's how you do it. I just can't show you the second part of taking it into Blender. Okay, so I'm going to do a File New. Okay, I'll do a File New. Some things you add into Blender, specifically your modifiers, and this little wrench, there it is. Sometimes when you add a modifier and you do something to it, if I choose smooth, you can apply this modifier, and then it became permanent. That's why I was wondering if it was for the animation, but I didn't see it, or for the shape keys. Okay, so I'm gonna create some kind of animation. See, the other one I slid it across. Maybe this one I'll have it rotate and increase in size. Okay, so I'm right here at 0. I'm going to do an I to choose location, rotation, scale to record that off. I'll go over here to 50, and I'll do an RX 90. Except for 90 doesn't do anything with the cube, does it? Let's try that again. Let's see, RX 45. There we go. Press enter. Come over here to 100, And I'm going to do an R. Yeah. Go back to 50. Do RX 45. Enter. And now do an I. Location, rotation, scale. Port and insert the keyframe. Now I go over to 100. I'm going to do a rotation or rotate about the X, another 45 degrees. Enter. I, location, rotation, scale. And one more. I'll come over here to 150. And I'm going to change the scale. So I'll do SX 5. Enter. And I'll do another I, location, rotation, scale. Kind of a boring animation. But anything you can do, anything you can imagine with rotation, with your translate, rotate, and scale, you can create an animation that can go into Unity. So I'm going to save that. Let's see, I'm on my desktop, so that's good. And Cube animation. Save as Blender file. Come over to here, and I'm going to right-click. By the way, I documented these steps because there's quite a few steps. So first step is to create the animation in Blender, which we just did. Next one, we want to import that into Blender. So do assets, import new asset, choose Blender file. So come down here, right-click in the gray area, import new asset, put it on my desktop. And what do I call it? Cube animation. And it drops that on there. Then you click your imported asset if necessary. It should already be selected actually. And in Inspector, you choose animation. So over here, you may have some other items selected, but you want to choose the animation. And if you do this play, you see a preview of it. So that's going to be your animation. There's also, this is where when we get more into putting it into the game and so forth, if you want to repeat the loop. So go through the animation one time and then repeat it again. Then you have that selected. This player, I think, does it by default, repeats it. So we won't see any change there. It just repeats that. This loop pose here, you can put your mouse over these and this tells you what to do. Enable to make the animation loop seamlessly. Because this kind of goes big and then all of a sudden, bam, it's started over again. If I choose the loop pose, it tries to intelligently decide how to put it back how it was. That's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that kind of put it back the way it was. I think I like it. Now, after you get done making all these changes, you have to click the apply here, or you can revert to get rid of your changes. If you forget, which I do most of the time, it'll remind you when you start doing anything else, say, do you want to apply your changes? So anyway, I'll just go ahead and click apply. Okay, let's see, click loop time. You make any other changes, click apply. We just did that. In assets, right click on imported file and choose create animator controller. So we just brought in this cube right here. I'll right click on it and I'll do a create an animator controller right here. It gives you a new icon down here, creates a controller. You can call it whatever you want. Cube controller, call it. Now we're going to, that's a rename if you wish. We're going to double click on it. So if I double click on that, it'll bring up my animator controller window. I'm going to right click on the gray area here and create state and create empty. That's this part right here. Right click in the gray area and choose create state and empty. We want to click the new state button. Now we looked at this with some of the earlier animations today, and we could change the speed of it in the game. Well, there's also a motion here. And so if I click the little circle on the far right here, I can choose default take. This is the animation that came in with the Blender file. Like if I click the Blender here and come over under the animation in the inspector, you see it says default take. If I would rename that, blend move, whatever you want to call it. Then when I got this, okay, apply. When I got this new states chose, if I choose a little circle here, it's a little bit more meaningful name here. So I'll choose that, close that window, and you should see that updated there. You can change the speed if you wanted to, but that's step 10. In inspector, choose circle option next to the motion, choose appropriate motion. You may have more than one. Go back to the scene and drag the Blender model onto the hierarchy. So click scene here. And I had trouble where if I tried to drag this and drop it right up here, it wouldn't appear. It looks like it's going to work for me here. There it does. Or you can drop it over here in the hierarchy. Both of them accomplish the same task. Now I notice it's a little bit below. In the last class, I moved it up thinking, okay, well, the animation will be relative based upon its position in the game. And I'm sure there's some kind of option that allows you to do that, but it didn't do any good to move it up. In the inspector option, choose the circle option next to controller. Oops, highlight all that. In the inspector, choose the circle option next to controller. In the animator section, choose the controller you just created. So I got my cube selected. Over here in my animator, you see it says none for the controller. So if I do that little circle here, I can choose the cube controller I created. Does that seem backwards to you?
I don't think so. It might be.
See, it bothers me because like when initially we created a controller based upon this, didn't we?
Yeah.
Remember up here where in the assets we right-clicked on imported file and chose the create animator controller? And then we did all our work there. When I dragged this and dropped it up into either your scene or your hierarchy, it loses the controller. And I have to reset it. It just seems like it should keep a controller, but I'm sure they're smarter than people me have come up with a reason why it doesn't. Okay, now if I run this, of course, it helps if my camera was a little bit better, maybe. Main camera. Yeah, did I click it? Yeah, I did. So you see it moving out, and I just need to move my camera down maybe, and changing the size. If I had that loop pose off here, now I'm changing it down here in the assets. I'm guessing it won't be updated up here, but maybe it will. Apply. Let's see. I won't re-add it, but I don't see it down here. That was the smooth transition from the ending of the animation to the beginning of the next. Okay, now it's achieving what I was wanting to before. Though my camera's still messed up. That sure looks right there. It isn't.
Your zoom is set into scale on 5. You might want to turn that back down to 1, right below the play animation.
Where do you see that?
It's back in game, and right below the pause, play, and skip button at the top of the cube, the scale is turned up.
Oh, okay. So how in the world did I change that?
I don't know, but I noticed it earlier.
Huh. I don't know how I grabbed that. I was wondering. Usually your camera view is what the game view is, but I must have... Oh, I bet I was over here. I did change that. Because you can change that during the game and see it better. I was playing with that the other class. Okay, now you see it rotating, just like what we created in Blender. You see it changing the size, just like we did in Blender. But it's below the terrain. This is what I was talking about. My original thought in the last class was you grab this, you move it up a little bit, and go to scene, I guess. You move it up like that. And then the positioning over in Blender will be relative based upon where this starts at. But if I remember right, when we played this, it put it back down to where it was. I'm sure there's a setting for it. I'll have to do some digging and so forth. If you run across it, let me know on that setting. But it has to be something like a relative and absolute a reference of some sort in one of these options. Now you can, since I imported this in, if I click the little triangle here to expand this, I can double click the cube. That'll bring up the actual Blender file I'm working with. Now at this point, if I move this up, then it'll move it up in my animation. You can't just move it in one place though, because I've recorded off the location everywhere. But if you choose the drop down here and you choose the animation, this is where the curves comes in. If I expand that, that would be, what would that be in terms of Blender? Z is up and down in Blender. So if I choose a Z location, again, you can scrub it here. You watch it as it's like that. No, actually, I guess it's the same everywhere, isn't it? I don't mess with the Z in my... So it should be a straight line across. You see how this is a straight line? I was wondering why it's a straight line, but that'd be the reason why. Let's see, are they all selected? Okay, let me try that again then. A to unselect. There's probably a way to select it along a channel. I just remember. Okay. That's moving along my red, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to select the Z scale instead of the X.
Yeah. You can always tell when you're doing it wrong when it goes the wrong direction. Ah. Is there? Select everything here. Boy, this is going to be a pain. See how when I click it, it says it highlights X scale? I'm clicking it again. It's Y scale. Click it again. It's Z scale because there's 3 points right on top of each other. I just don't know how you do a multi-select with that. But anyway, that should be worse. What did that change? Scale. Jeez. Go home, go to sleep. Put those back down. Okay. What do I want? Z location, right? Okay, that's better. Oops. Well, I guess I can just do this. I'll just lock them all except for Z. Now if I select everything, will it change? Okay, Z is the only thing that's changing then. Okay, so do Z and then move it up like that. Now let's play our animation. Okay. So these, I had one unlocked, didn't I? Or did I? Well, there. Z. Okay. We'll go with that. I'm just trying to show you that you can change it there and it's automatically reflected over here. You'll see this do a little flicker when it gets done updating. I think it finished. And I moved it up too far. But at least you can see that when you bring in a Blender file, if you change it here, it changes it automatically in your animation. Now let's take a look at bones. And let's see, where did I have that? Desktop, werewolf. No, that already has a bone in it. Werewolf. I don't think that one has a bone. Okay, so I'm going to redo my screen here because I don't like these properties down here. So I'll change this to properties. Right click in here and choose vertical. And right click on this and have it header flip to the top. Okay. And down here, I'll choose this to be my timeline because I'm going to create an animation. Give myself a little bit more screen space. There we go. Now, you can set your, I don't remember the keystroke. You can set your cursor, here it is, cursor to selected. That should help us. Now, I want to drop a bone inside the werewolf. So over here, I'm going to do an add, and then choose armature, choose single bone. And it looks like I put it in the middle of its head. Before, my cursor was clear over to the side, and I had to move the bone back. And that's fine that the bone's there for now. Over here, you got some new options. Looks like a little stick figure, and then you got a bone next to it. If you pick the stick figure, that's your what's called an armature. That's your entire bone system. And if you choose X-ray, then it allows you to see the bone inside your body. Now I can do a GZ, and move the bone down maybe in the center. They always say your starting bone should be at a strategic location and everything based upon that it just animates better. I always try to put it in the middle of the body. Now if I zoom in, I have this bone selected, and I can go to edit mode. And if I put right click this joint right here, I can do an E for extrude and move my mouse, and it creates a bone up here. If I do E for extrude again, you do it here. And you try to put it to places where your body normally would bend. That's where you want to put that joint, that little ball. And now I'll do an E for extrude again, take it out the elbow. E again for extrude, take it out to the wrist. Now sometimes when I create a bone, it's not actually inside the mesh. Not that it has to be perfect. It can stick outside of the mesh, because you don't actually see that when you animate the bone, that is. And if I rotate this, I'm using my mouse wheel, and I'm just moving my mouse. I see that I'm pretty far off this time. I was even closer the last time. Probably if I select all the bones and move them in, I'll be better off. So if I go back to object mode, all of them are selected. I'll do a G for grab and move them in. I'm going to come back here. That's good, that direction. That's good, that direction. Yeah, that's probably as good as I'm going to get. Okay. Now I want to connect the bones to the mesh. Our bones are connected to our bodies via muscle, tissue, I don't know. Haven't had biology for 35 years. Got a D in it when I did take it, so I was never very good at it. But there's something that connects your bones to your body. Otherwise, your bones would be floating around free in your body. And
You mean tendons?
Is that what it is? Tendons. Okay, fantastic. I had the biology instructor here tell me I should go take a biology class. I'd forget it. Okay, now I had to look this up in myself. I had to think of the order, and I still don't remember it. I need to write it down. You select the mesh first, I think. Yeah, select the mesh first, and then the armature. The order does matter. Okay, so I want to go back to object mode, which I am. I'll select the mesh, hold down my shift key, and select the bones, the armature, and do a control P for parenting. And I want to choose armature deform with automatic weights. Now if I click the bone, I had to click it twice to get the bone to selected. I can go into something called pose mode. And in pose mode, if I have that selected, if I do a G for grab, I can move it up, and it'll move up the entire arm. If I grab this one, do a G for grab, I can move it up like that. Now this is based upon weights. And it says automatic weighting. And we'll see later on how to set our own weights and how to manipulate it a little bit more. But if you're curious what it looks like, over here, since I have the armature selected, I'm in pose mode. This is automatically selected. If it isn't, click the stick figure. And you see there's octahedral, which is, I'm assuming, this geometric shape. There's stick figure, B-bone, and then the envelope is the most useful. This shows you what's affected when you move that bone. Like this right here, when I do a G for grab and move this up, this is the weight. This is the influence of what's affected. You can increase this envelope size. This isn't too bad. But you notice when I move it up that high, not that my body can normally move that high, it distorts this. So it takes a little bit of, obviously you can't move your arm over like that. I'm right mouse clicking to cancel those. But anyway, I've created my armature here. So now I'm in pose mode. I'm at 0 in terms of my timeline. If I select this bone here, I do an I, location, rotation, scale. I come over here to 30, and I do an R, and I rotate it up. You'll find that doing a G achieves the same effect. Now if I do an I, location, rotation, scale, click here, do an E for in, let me do an Alt-A, you see our animation. Now let's take this into Unity to show you that the animation is still there. So I'm going to do a file, save as, and choose desktop, and I'll call it werewolf moving blend. Okay, so now if I go over to Unity, right click down here, and choose import new asset. Werewolf moving is right there. Oops. So double click that. It'll come on here, and I got time to go through my steps without screwing this up. So let's see, create animation. We just did that. Assets, we imported the new asset. Just did that. If you want to change anything about the animation, that's what you do here, although you don't have to change anything if you don't want. Name is probably a good thing to change. So if I come over here, for my animation, it calls it default take. So this is my werewolf wave. Assuming I brought the animation in this time. I did. Last time I did in such a hurry, I didn't bring it in correctly. Or I didn't create the animation first. I forget what. Okay, but I gave it a name. Let me see. Loop time. I'll click apply. And assets. Right click on imported file and choose create animator controller. So I'll right click on this and I'll choose create animator controller. And it says animator controller. I want to give it a more meaningful name. I'll call it werewolf controller. Rename if you wish. Double click the new controller and assets. So double click werewolf controller. I'll right click in this gray area, create state, create empty. If I click this, I need to assign it a motion, and that's what I'm. Let me see. Create state empty. We just did that. We just clicked the new state button, and now we need to pick a motion. So I come up here, click this circle. This is why it's nice to give them different names. Last class I had both of them named default take or something like that, so I didn't know which was which. But werewolf wave is what I want. Then we want to go back to the scene, drag the Blender model onto the hierarchy or the scene itself. So if I go to the scene, that seemed to work last time, so let me do it again. Where was my werewolf? Right down here. I'll drag werewolf onto there. I'm behind a werewolf, but that's okay. You'll still see the animation. In the inspector, choose a circle next to the controller. So we just dropped this werewolf on here. And over here in our animator, the controller, we need to set it to the werewolf controller. And now if I play that, you see the arm waving. Now some things you can fiddle with on this, some you can't. Let's try loop pose, see what that does. Hopefully it put the arm back down. Apply. No, it just restricts the animation. See, these are things that you have to play with. You know, but the nice part of it again is since I have this imported now, I don't have to change the original. This is a copy. Which one do I click on? Plane. This one looks like the actual model. And I'll come over here, do an E, and I'll move my bone back down. Do another I, location, rotation, scale. Make sure it took, yeah. Now if I do a file save, let it give it a second to update. There it goes. Run it. Hopefully we'll see our arm go back down. Yeah, I guess it is. Seems like it's going down faster, doesn't it?
I don't think it's going down. I think it's just returning to original position.
Oh, you think it is? That's interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. So I wonder why that is. If I re-import. Oh, shoot, I'm out of time. It could be I'd have to drop it back up here. Let me delete that. If I drop the werewolf back up there. Now let's run it. Except for I have to add the controller. I don't know why I can't remember the controller. I don't know. That kind of looks like it's starting just at the brand new place again, doesn't it? I don't know about that. I'd have to think. Huh. Oh well, I'm out of time, so there's no project on that since we're running short of time there.